and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. Today we're going to be looking at pruning our autumn raspberries and our blackberries. Now blackberries in theory are really easy to prune. Now we're going to start with the raspberries, and these are autumn fruiting raspberries. A little bit earlier on in the year we filmed ourselves doing the summer fruiting raspberries. We're now mid-November now, and any time from now right up to sort of February next year, to the following year, you can be pruning these. Now we like to do ours in November, not least because it lets some air and light into this particular part of the garden. And I also need to clear these first because the blackberry, as they do, is everywhere. What I do like the idea of is that my guru, Scylla, is ensuring that I'm going to do a really good job. It's nice to get a picture of Scylla because, being new to the clan, she's the one that's least on film, so it was nice to have a little piece of her on film. So, with autumn fruiting raspberries, it's really very, very easy. There's not too much to say about this other than cut them right down to the ground. That's all you have to do. And then next spring, they will start to grow again and you'll see them re-emerge. So with autumn ones, they actually fruit on the current year's wood. Whereas with the summer fruiting raspberries, they fruit on 1 year old wood. And that's why with the summer ones, we need to take out the fruiting stems when they finish toward the end of August, and then we tie the new stems in that have grown, and they grow all through the spring. As I say, in the summertime, then you just tie those on. You can probably just make them out there where we've tied them in, and they'll be ready to go late May, June next year. But as I say, with autumn raspberries, they flower on the current year's wood. So, as I said, all you need to do is to cut those right down to the ground. So as you can see, I have rather a lot to cut down. Now we can see now that the autumn raspberries have been cut down to the ground, we can see exactly what we need to do with this blackberry. Now blackberries, depending on what variety you have, they will stop producing their fruits somewhere between the end of August and October. And once they've finished bearing their fruit, it's time to cut them down. Now the reason why we need to prune blackberry bushes is that they are actually biennials. So the new wood that you can see growing here, although it's extremely green, this will carry the fruit for next year. But the wood that has just fruited, we now need to prune out. Now it would go on to actually produce some fruit if you left it, but it would be quite a poor harvest. And if you think you'd have two lots of canes actually struggling for the same amount of food and water in the soil to get a harvest. So it makes sense to actually prune those back. And you may remember at the start of the video when I said, and our blackberries, which in theory, should be very easy. Now, myself and Mrs. W have made this very easy for ourselves because we actually have a thornless blackberry. But if you have a thornless one, you can see the growing characteristics of a blackberry. They flollop and lollop everywhere. And when you want to get down and prune, if you've got lots of thorny bits everywhere, they get you in the face, on your hands. So in particular when you're doing this, if you've got a thorny variety, make sure you wear gloves. And the other thing is that once we do cut them from the bottom and you start to pull them out, the thorns get entangled in the rest of the bush and it makes it quite difficult to pull those out. Am I not right, Scylla?
Hello, pretty girl.
Now, for those of you that may not have grown blackberries before, they're really good soft fruit to grow. They give in abundance and they can be used for many things. We use them for jams, to go with our cooking apples, to make lovely crumbles. You can have them just as a fruit on their own with cream. You know, they're so versatile. And of course you can make some wonderful blackberry wine too. But one of the things we have learnt over the years is that trying to recognise which of these stems fruited last year and which didn't can sometimes be difficult. In some cases, because it's been really mild this year, I can still see that there are some branches that have fruits on them. So clearly I know that they fruited this year. But if it had been more like a normal year and it had been much colder now and there was no fruit on it, the one way that myself and Mrs. W know which ones to prune is because they'll be tied into this structure. And that's no given way. So I know that this branch, because it was tied to there, that's already fruited this year. And all we need to do with blackberries, like the autumn fruiting raspberries, is you cut them right down to the base. And then that just needs to come out of there. And the one thing that I didn't say when we were actually doing the raspberries, which has just reminded me, is that all of this material can be composted, but you do need to shred it first. And it can be used as some nice brown material to mix with your greens. Other than that, with the actual raspberry canes, they're quite good as pea sticks to help your peas grow up. They're really good for that. And they can be used for various other plants that you may need to put a stake in that doesn't need to be really, really, you know, tough and hard, you know. Just something that somebody just wants to grow up that's quite light. So they can be used in many ways. Now you can see that the very fact that we've removed the stems that did fruit this year, that you can see right through here now, and it's quite easy to film. But it gives you an idea now of what we now have going forward into next year. And essentially we pick our fruit from this frame here. And what we want is 6 stems. Now that will be done through a selection of process. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to take these 2 out because they're coming out this way and then they're going to go around there, so they're going to interfere with my raspberries that are growing here. There are some that are going that way towards the greenhouse, and you can probably see that I haven't been able to mow the lawn around here very well because everything has been growing. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is there's no right or wrong way of doing this. It's just trying to keep what you consider might be your best stems, but in some cases, because there are so many, these look really quite good stems, but they're just not going to grow the way that we want to grow them. But in truth, you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 11 stems that have shot up from this base since the springtime, and we certainly don't need 11. We need to be brutal and decide which is going to be best for us. As I say, there really isn't any golden rule to this. So I've made my decisions about these, so these are coming out. And you can see really just how long these plants get. There you go, that'll give you a good idea just how much these grow during the season. And bearing in mind When spring first comes, these stems aren't anywhere near there. All there will be here are the ones that we're going to pick fruit from. So from something like April onwards, these things continue to grow and to grow and to grow. Now you can see behind me now that we have thinned these out, have had their prune, and what we have done is just tied these stems loosely into the wooden structures. So you can see they are quite loose. They're just there just so that they don't fall about in the winds that we'll get during the winter months. But they don't want to be too tight because they're going to get really quite thick, some of these stems. Probably some of these will get over 1 inch in diameter, in width. So yeah, don't tie them too tight. They're just there just so that they're not being whipped about in the wind and they don't snap and break. And that's all you really have to do to them. They don't need much more maintenance to them, just cutting them back like that once a year. Now what I will do, regardless all of this area for the soft fruit, which is the raspberries and the blackberries, I should just give this a good mulching with some compost. I should probably do that in the next week or so, but it could be done any time between now and February. If you're not no-dig like us and don't use compost to feed your soil, to feed your plants, then it's a good idea between now and February to May get some well-rotted manure around your canes, but keeping it away from the stems so that it can't burn it, so that the goodness can go into the ground and feed these plants. Or if you don't want to use that, or you can't get hold of that, then obviously there's things like fish blood and bone that you can just scatter around next spring just to give them a boost as they spring back into growth. So yeah, I always think that they're such good value for money, soft fruits. You get plenty of them and they really require so little maintenance, just a bit of pruning at this time of the year for the blackberries and the autumn fruiting raspberries, and of course toward the end of August when the summer ones finish, then they just need to be pruned as well, and just a little bit of feeding, and they will pay you back with oodles and oodles of lovely soft fruit. Now Scylla seems to have gone away now. She was here a little earlier just before we finished, and she has inspected what I've done, and we got the seal of approval. If you've got soft fruit, do let us know in the comments down below what you're doing at this time of the year. Do you prune yours the same way? Do you have a different regime that you use? Actually, do you have a thornless one like us, or do you have one that is full of thorns? Do let us know how you're getting on with your soft fruit. And as I said earlier, we'll do no more to these now really until we get to next spring. So if you'd like to subscribe and you haven't done already, then don't forget to hit that big red button down below. And then you'll be able to get these springing into growth in the same way that we will next March and April. We shall see you next time.